We just discussed how to use UML to model our solution, which gave us a clearer understanding of what we need to build and for whom. Using this information, we'll cover questions to ask when choosing the appropriate services. Now, earlier you saw new layers of services are added onto Web 2.0 in order to make use of Web 3.0 services, such as wallets, blockchain services, and in some cases, the IPFS services. So in the remainder of this lesson, we'll walk you through the thought process to help you narrow down your choices when choosing the right tool for each service. Now, these are the same questions that you'll need to consider when working as a blockchain developer, no matter what scale of application that you're building. For the following discussion, let's assume we're going to grow way beyond our 2-actor pet example, so start thinking big. In this scenario, you're part of a blockchain developer team tasked to build a blockchain solution for a prominent wine producer, Vindacity. They take their wines very seriously, and so do their consumers, who want to know the origins and authenticity of the products they buy. It was also recently reported that on average, consumers paid about a 25% premium for fair trade labeled wines versus unlabeled wines, and they want the consumers to be confident in their labels. Vindacity is a middle-sized business who have about 100 actors involved in their system and expect to grow to handle about 1,000 transactions per second per year. You'll need to make decisions about the platform, database, and the supporting frameworks and supporting libraries. Now, the platform and database will be our biggest decisions, since the frameworks and libraries will be decided on as a result of the decisions of our first 2 choices. Let's look at the platform decisions. The core metrics that will help us narrow down on the platforms will be network, performance, business logic, and consensus. First, network. What scale are we expecting? And how many participants do we expect to interact with in this solution? Will it be hundreds of thousands of users or just a small handful? Also, do we want or need to know the participants in the network? Or can we trust them without knowing everything about them? In our case, we expect at most about 100 active users on the network at a time. We also expect them to be able to participate without knowing everything about each other. Now, what about the performance of the network? So for this, we need to consider how many transactions we are anticipating per second and how much data per transaction do we expect. We can use existing metrics to conclude average shipment orders to be executed. We should also consider the transactional throughput, meaning the amount of transactions that can be executed at a given time. Now, there are 2 sides of interacting with data. There's the creation and modification of the data, and then the querying of that data. In a supply chain use case, most of our application interactions will be on the querying side. The creation of the data is restricted to the producer, who creates goods for the marketplace. Next, let's look at the business logic. So here we'll assume the business logic is kept simple, meaning we'll be a standalone solution. Also, the privacy of the transaction is not an important feature, and the data should be public since we want our consumers and other actors in the supply chain to be able to track the product details and reassure them of its authenticity. Lastly, let's consider the type of consensus required. Will we need an arbitrator in the event of a dispute? In the case of our example, we'll not. But say our blockchain were tracking legal deeds passed amongst landowners, then in that case, that would be a strong consideration. Next, we want all participants to be involved in the validation of transactions. And for the sake of simplicity in assumptions, we want strict immutability of the records with no need to amend or cancel transactions. Now, with decisions about what we need from the platform discussed, let's look at our database storage needs. First, what data are we storing? We need to store data about the transactions as well as the fields about the wine to prove authenticity, such as the origin, the producer, and the bottling date. Now, for the premise of our supply chain, data is collected in a transactional manner, solely on the blockchain platform. There's no need for the data to be stored in a separate database for now, since we'll only focus on the validation of product authenticity using a public blockchain. Given that, we need to determine the chain's visibility, meaning will it be public or private? If the number of transactions needed are relatively low and there's no need for private data, we can utilize a publicly visible chain. Now, with all these decisions concluded, we decided to select Ethereum as our platform of choice for this product, as it suits our needs. Now, there are a number of possible contenders such as Neo, Hyperledger, or Kadena, and we highly advise you to follow a similar thought process when deciding on a platform and database. With the platform chosen, we can look into the frameworks that support the platform. So Truffle and Ganache are popular ones that you should be familiar with already. Choosing a framework depends on the language the software application solution is being developed with. For instance, knowing that our target is to develop an interface for the front end with JavaScript, we can utilize the Truffle framework. Once a framework is decided, the libraries chosen should be compatible. Choosing the libraries depends on choosing the service type, so whether that's backend or front end, as well as the language being used for that development. As we covered in the previous term, make sure the libraries are well maintained and community vetted. Now that wraps it up for this section on making decisions on service layers. Remember to consider these core components: the network, performance, business logic, consensus, and data storage concerns when making decisions about new layers of service, no matter what scale of application you're building.